Afternoon. My name's Stephen Walker. I'm one of the subject advisors in the maths team here at OCR. Currently working on the redevelopment of the OCR A-level maths and further maths. Prior to joining OCR in July 2014, I was teaching secondary mathematics both in the UK and overseas, and have held head of department responsibilities in the past. I originally studied materials engineering, but moved into education after working as a volunteer maths and science teacher with VSO. I'm also joined by Carl and Gemma from CUP, who will be also talking about the support that they will be offering to support the OCR Spec A Maths and further maths. So today I'm going to have a quick look through the specification, some of the aspects that you need to think about with linear assessment, and also the support that will be offered by OCR. If you've got any questions, then feel free to type them into the message box and I will answer them as we're going through or at the end. If I don't have the chance to answer every question, then we will get back to you after the event. So in terms of the specification, mainly focus on the A-level, the content, and all the changes that we've had to put in place as we move from the legacy into the reformed A-level qualifications. Now the AS and A-level maths now both include some statistics and some mechanics. In terms of the full A-level, you can think of it as the current pure content, core 1 to core 4, and that makes up 2/3 of the A-level. And then the statistics and the mechanics are approximately the same size as an applied unit at the moment, but there are some changes in the contents there. In statistics, it's much more interpretive, much less calculations. There is the inclusion of a large data set, which I will be looking at, and there is hypothesis testing, which hasn't been in S1 in most specifications. Said 1/6 of the A-level, so it is approximately a current applied unit, but taken from content from S1 and S2, and there are aspects from S3 and S4, all depending on which specification you are currently teaching. In the mechanics, there's an emphasis on the application of vectors and calculus, plus forces and Newton's laws. Pretty much taken content from M1 and M2. And key thing to think about is that the questions on the AS papers are at an AS level of demand, but in the A level, because it's now a linear qualification, you are looking at the questions on the full A level at an A level of demand across the whole grade spectrum. Notice there's no decision maths, that has gone. That was part of the consultation response from ALCAB. However, decision maths appears in a similar form, but in the further maths spec at an appropriate further maths level of demands. So the A-level specification, we've got H230, which is the AS, 2 papers, a pure mechanics and a pure in statistics. Apologies, the other way around. 1.5 hours, 75 marks. Section A, pure maths, 50 marks, and then section B, 25 marks on the applied. In the full A-level, H240, 3 2-hour papers, 100 marks on each paper. The pure paper, and then 2 split pure and applied, split section A 50 marks pure and 50 marks on the applied. The large data set is focused on the statistics paper. The pure can be on any paper. There's no distinction about specific bits of pure being on specific papers. There's no formula book for the A-level maths. There is an expectation that students will be accessing the statistical tables from their calculator, so there's no need for all those tables to be provided. So the formula that we are allowed to provide will be in the front page of the question paper. And we've gone for a question paper and a separate printed answer book to make sure that it's easy for students on the long A-level type questions, rather than answering each individual part of the question next to the question in one combined question and answer book. When you look at our specification, the content looks quite big, especially when you look at the statistics section, section 2, and the mechanics section, section 3. And this is because we have taken the DFE content, we've broken it down and then rebuilt it, and then included a lot of examples to help support teachers. And this was especially important for the applied sections, because we know that there are teachers who have traditionally only taught statistics or only taught mechanics, and so the extra support is to help those teachers that perhaps haven't taught that aspect for a while. The further maths specification has a similar sort of structure. So as I said, we've got stage 1, which is the AS content, and then showing the progression into stage 2, so that the full A-level content is both columns. And whilst we do have the A-level maths as a synoptic, there are links between pure and mechanics and links between the pure and statistics. There's no reason why you can't split the content across various teachers, but there needs to be clarity to the students that especially the pure could appear everywhere. So that they shouldn't expect that just because a teacher is teaching one bit of content in the pure, that it will only appear on one specific paper. The other key aspect of the specification is we've actually defined some assessment command words to make it nice and clear to teachers and students exactly what the questions are going to be expecting. There is no non-calculator paper. Students can use their calculator for any question. However, some of these command words will make it a very clear indication how much written mathematical justification is needed. Statements like show that, determine, in this question you must show detailed reasoning, they can be considered key phrases to look out for. The general advice that students should show working to gain partial credit still applies, but these command words are there to support the students. The command word hence has been used to signal that the working already done in an earlier part may be useful, and so save the students some time. The hence and otherwise similarly signals this, but might also reflect that there could be other, possibly more efficient techniques, possibly opportunities for those students that are doing maths and further maths to actually use some of their further maths skills if that would seem more appropriate to them. In both of these cases, the hence and otherwise, students would not be penalised mark-wise for using alternative methods, although if they use the less efficient method, there may be a time penalty involved from having to do that extra work. In receiving all the documentation from the DFE and Ofqual in designing the reformed specifications and sample assessment material, there was, as well as the content, the mathematical technical items to deal with, there was also some overarching themes that we had to bring into the assessment, and those should be part of the focus of the teaching and learning as well. So we've got the overarching theme 1, which is mathematical arguments and language and proof, and that pretty much ties into the assessment objective 2, and the overarching theme 2, mathematical problem solving, and the OT3, mathematical modelling, they link into aspects of the assessment objective 3. And this was one of the reasons why we have not gone for separate pure papers and separate applied papers, because there is this expectation of bringing parts of maths together from across the curriculum. So the idea that there are links between pure and mechanics and links between pure and statistics. Obviously there are links between mechanics and statistics, but they won't come up as assessment questions. Just introduce the idea of the assessment objectives. Those of you teaching GCSE will recognise these. It's the AO1, using and applying standard techniques, your mathematical toolbox, and that's the same weightings in both maths and further maths. And then the AO2, the reason, interpret and communicate mathematically, justifying what you're thinking, and then the AO3, solving problems within mathematics and in other contexts. You'll notice there is a slight difference from maths to further maths. The reason for that flexibility in further maths is to take into account the difference or the focus that you might have in the various optional routes that students may take. There may be a lot more pure mathematical, so there might be more AO2, or there could be more modelling and problem solving in the more applied optional units, and so they might have more AO3. Just having a quick look from Andy, a question about there's no penalty if you use a different method. As I say, if you did use a different method, it would probably take you a bit longer. So where there is a hence, the idea is that you are building on what you have already worked out, so you don't need to start from scratch. Whereas the hence or otherwise, that's a recognition that perhaps that starting point might not be the most efficient, with a broader appreciation of the full maths and further maths curriculum. So perhaps a student would say, oh, actually, I can do this more efficiently, So if they get the right answer, they're not going to be penalised. And if it was a very unusual method, and the person marking it didn't recognise it, then they would raise a query with their team leaders or the principal examiner, who would look at the answer to work out if it is a valid method or if they've just got the answer by a bit of fluke. I hope that reassures you on that matter. Looking at the AO1s, this document is available from Ofqual, and I've just included the slides of all the assessment objectives, just to highlight some of the areas. When you look at the mark schemes, you'll actually see reference to what assessment objective each mark has been linked to. So the AO1 is pretty much selecting and using mathematical techniques. In AO2, this is where the marks are going to be awarded for showing clear mathematical wording. Important to give the opportunity to make deductions and to make inferences in class using open-ended questioning, thinking about the obtained answers, and taking that to the next step. Could there be other ways of doing it? What are the limitations? And there's also an aspect of using mathematical language and notation correctly. One of the key bits here is using formal mathematical notation rather than a specific manufacturer calculator notation. So there is that idea that it should be the correct notation rather than how it looks on the calculator. In terms of AO3, marks awarded for identifying the technique is generally method marks, and method marks awarded for partial credit even if the accuracy marks are not awarded. And in class, the idea of using starter and plenary activities that review previous work rather than only focusing on the current topic heading, questions that require drawing together different aspects of the specification, plenary questions that get learners to identify the links across the maths curriculum and linking in with their other subjects. Pretty standard Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 practices, but perhaps not so prominent in the current unitized legacy structure at Key Stage 5. Because there is a focus on just specific techniques for a specific exam. So it's just using the more broad teaching ideas. Also got the point that students should be putting their calculated values back into the context of the original problem. Not just leaving the question as a numerical number or an algebraic expression, but actually referring back to what the question was asking for. So if they solve a quadratic equation, what are those x values actually referring to? If it's to substitute back into a vector, or if it's looking at a hypothesis test, having worked out the numerical value, how does that compare with the hypothesis that you're actually testing? In an exam, it's actually quite difficult to set questions that allow learners to suggest their own mathematical model, perform those calculations and then do a review and improve their model. It's difficult in exams due to the issues of follow-through marks and the risk of double penalisation of any mistakes. But within the class, this type of work should be encouraged, and the exam questions may include questions where the learner must evaluate the validity of a proposed model and the answers that they have achieved using those models. And similarly, questions may be provided with experimental results which perhaps do not match a given model. So there's opportunities for performing experiments in class so that the students will recognise the limitations of the models when they come to the examination. And that's one place where perhaps doing a mechanics experiment and then doing some statistical analysis on those results. As I say, that's not the type of question that will come up in the exam, but it is the sort of understanding, looking at the limitations of those models. In order to support teachers in this transition, we have produced some mapping documents because there's no reason to scrap all the work you've been doing preparing schemes of work for the legacy A-level. And it was actually part of our redevelopment, mapping documents that say, right, so this is the new content, where did it come from? Because there is some moving around. Although I said the core, the pure maths is focused on core 1 to core 4, the AS content is not necessarily limited to C1 and C2. In statistics, the AS statistics is very much focused on discrete data now, with stage 2 moving into continuous data. The AS mechanics is focused on motion and straight line, some 2D work, but using vectors with no depth to understanding of resolving forces needed. The stage 2 has the projectiles and resolving forces. There is also a small section on statics in the stage 2. So the mapping document highlights content that has not mapped from the legacy to the reform qualification, for example, remainder theorem and division by a quadratic polynomial, solving modulus problems of general functions. In the reform, it will only be solving linear, but there is actually a need for an understanding of the effects on graphs, but not algebraically. So these types of notes have been included in the mapping documents. There's also notes on where there's new content, especially where that builds upon the content of the new GCSE higher tier requirements. For example, there's explicit requirements to use pure techniques in context for modelling and problem solving. And where there is new content requirements, for example, sketching parametric equations and the ambiguous case of the sign rule, these have been included in the mapping documents. And there's also some notes about where there's been a slight change in emphasis. So if I take, for example, vectors, they're much more focused now on the application in context rather than on the pure maths of scalar products, for example. Now, in terms of moving from the modular format to a linear assessment, there's a few things to consider. So first of all, The AS content that's covered in Year 12 will need to be returned to be reviewed and taken up to the A-level level of demand. In the same way that at GCSE there's an expectation that foundation content could be assessed at higher tier, so AS maths techniques for stage 1 could be assessed at an A-level level of demand. So for example, here's an example from H240, paper 2, question 6. This question makes use of the AS 1.06i modelling using exponential functions as the context, but it's actually the main focus of the question is the A-level 1.7t constructing differential equations. And here's the mark scheme for that question. And you can see in the mark scheme we've got indication of the marks, B marks and E marks for explanation and statements, M marks for methods, A marks for accuracy, and where that has been allocated to the assessment objectives. And in the guidance we've got notes to help support in the first instance the team marking the papers, but also teachers and students if they want to use the mark schemes as part of the teaching and learning program and reviewing papers. As well as that, because it's linear, we've got synoptic assessment. The pure content could be on any paper and it can link into the applied, and similarly the applied could link into the pure. And it's important to take this into account if you've got more than one teacher delivering the full content. Need to make sure there's good collaboration between the teaching team to make sure that learners don't try to silo knowledge according to the teacher that's teaching them different aspects. And mention the idea of spiraling back to previous content. In the current modular system, we do have the prior knowledge expectations, but the focus of the papers have been very much on the content of those units. We don't have the unitized structure now, it's a linear assessment, so they do need to be making those links and in class having open-ended questioning and problem solving as an integral part of the teaching. There was a requirement that maths and further maths should be co-taught. These are decoupled qualifications. They've been designed so that they can be taught in parallel, but there's no reason why you have to. Some centres currently deliver maths in the first year and further maths in the second year. There is no reason to change, but there's also no reason to stick with what you're doing. It all depends on your cohort and what you feel would be the best approach for your students and your centre. And we've got support to help you with that. So the AS and A-level qualifications are decoupled, so the AS will provide a good indication, but the mark for the AS will not contribute to the final A-level grade. Similarly, the maths and further maths are separate, so the current system of units being able to be used in maths or further maths and optimizing the grading, that's not going to be there. The AS further maths does assume knowledge of AS maths, and then the A-level further maths does assume knowledge of A-level maths, but there isn't the current requirement that you must do A-level maths in order to be able to certificate for further maths. So that may be an advantage if you have students that are transferring from international schools, or if they're transferring from a school that has done IB. It means that if they have the maths knowledge, then they could just do the further maths if that's appropriate for them. But when it comes to how we've written the specification, it has been developed with that co-teachability regardless of optional routes that students take. And as I've said, the parallel approach was a requirement, but it's up to you which way you want to deliver the course. We've developed a teaching order framework. It has to be made clear that this is one possible generic solution that offers the co-teachable parallel approach, regardless of which two options you would like to offer for further maths. It is fully editable and can be used as a starting point for developing a scheme of work. Although we've put sort of nominal weeks, we haven't planned it on a week-by-week basis because you'll want to take into account your cohorts, strengths and weaknesses that you know from your experience of the students that you have coming onto your course, and it gives you the flexibility to make links, have time for formative assessment, investigations, and then other things that may get in the way of your day-to-day timetabling. And then we've got the scheme of work builder. If I just take you to my desktop, make sure I open the right one. So the scheme of work builder, you can set it up to design on a week-by-week or a lesson-by-lesson. My recommendation is not to try to plan the whole year in one document, but you can select whichever bits of content you would like to put in, and it's based on all the spec references, so you can add whichever bits of the content you would like to put in. You can type in your own notes, and we will be producing online delivery guides which will tie into the scheme of work, so that there will be resources that will tie in to each of the specification content items. And moving on to the assessment material and the support. So the assessment material, the SAMs are currently available online. We are writing practice papers which will be held on interchange, so that means that they'll be password protected to allow centres to use them as mocks. We will have 3 practice papers that will be written in total, and these are being written specifically for the new specification. They are not questions taken from past papers. But we will have those past papers available on Exam Builder, which you can access. At the moment, our Exam Builder, Apologies. You can filter the questions. You can either choose a paper or a specific year, or you can focus on specific content. This is currently the exam builder for the legacy qualification. We are currently mapping those across to the new content references, so they will be linked to the new AS and A-level maths and further maths specifications. You can go in, you can, when you choose a question, you've got the question, you've got the mark scheme, and as well as the mark scheme for these legacy questions, you've also got any comments that the examiner made in the examiner's report, so you can see if there were issues with the question, if students found it straightforward or where some misconceptions were picked up. We've also got resources on the OCR Subject website. So from OCR Maths, you can choose, we've got further maths, the further maths Spec B, there's the legacy qualifications, and then Maths A. And we've got the specification, the summary brochure, links to the CPD hub. There's a link about the transition and final assessment. The sample assessment material and the large data set is there. And then we are putting together check-in tasks, both section check-ins and also topic check-ins. If I open one up. So we've got 10 questions, a range of AO criteria assessed, and then there's an extension question, so you can get students really doing some problem solving and taking the content past just the basic content requirements. There's work solutions, and also some suggestions for the extension task. And we've also got lesson elements, looking at the large data set and other useful resources. And the teacher guides is where you'll find the mapping documents and the teaching order framework. Some other useful websites. We've been working with Underground Maths. They'll be at our conference on Friday, and they're doing one of the webinars later on this week. Good resources, Enrich. The MEI website has some good resources, and RISTS is quite a good resource. These are all good sources of synoptic type problems that actually get students thinking and making links that perhaps wasn't such a big aspect of the unitized structure. There's also GeoGebra has lots of brilliant demonstrations and modeling. especially for mechanics, so that students can see a demonstration without actually having to go down to the physics department to do an experiment. So I'm now going to hand over to CUP, and
Hello everyone, my name's Gemma Valpy and I'm from CUP, as Stephen just said. I think Stephen's just loaded our slides there. I've also joined by Carl Worsley, who's our Maths Publishing Manager. And just to say that CUP are very proud to be working as OCR's publisher partner for A-Level Maths and Further Maths. And I'm going to hand over to Carl, who's going to talk you through the Cambridge resources for A-Level Maths and Further Maths. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carl, and I'm the publisher for at CUP for Maths. The changes to A-Level Maths have been really, really huge, biggest for 25 years, as you know. And so we've written our series from scratch to provide complete coverage of the new specification. And it's totally written from scratch, meaning that it is not adapted from previous books or anything like that. We have a focus on problem solving, proof and modelling, also reasoning, communication, etc., which are all the new overarching themes, as Steve has just been talking about. It's all woven into our new series with a focus really on deeper understanding, knowing in the knowledge that just rote learning, which may have been sort of in vogue in the past, is something that you can't really do now. We have more worked examples and assessment questions than any other published resource to our knowledge, and this really comes from the market research we've done with teachers like yourselves, where you have said that you want lots and lots of practice examples of assessment, of what it's actually going to look like when it comes to the final assessments, and you want to know what a good solution looks like. So we've really majored on that. We have a kind of a unique color coding system in our exercises, which allows progression from sort of rote type fluency type questions, progressing all the way through to assessment style. There's extensive teacher support, including schemes of work, teaching plans, and also a section on the large data set, because we're very aware that this has caused some concern, because it's very new. So we've included that, and all of our large data set references are related to the OCR context. We have a digital platform called Elevate that works both offline and offline, so it can be used flexibly for teaching front of class or for independent learning, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. We have further maths options for coverage, so covering mechanics, statistics, discrete maths, and additional pure, and of course also the compulsory further maths as well. So we have complete coverage. And something else that Stephen was talking about the sort of the synoptic element of the new structure of the new A levels. We've really tried to embed that in our course, so there's a synoptic approach embedded throughout. Looking at our actual textbooks, this is you can see an example of a student book there. We start each chapter. This one's particular chapter is exponential models. We start each chapter with learning objectives, which relate to the objectives in the specification, so that you can plan your delivery quite easily. We then have a before you start kind of section, which is really about ensuring that your students are prepared for what's to come. I think now there's more stuff on exponentials in the GCSEs, so hopefully they'll be more prepared. But as an ex-teacher, I do remember there are those times when students just weren't prepared for a chapter, so we try to sort of make sure that they're led gently into it and there's no surprises. Then moving on, we have key points. So the basic look and feel of the book is such that it's very, very straightforward to navigate through. There's key points which really allow your students to focus their learning and consolidation, thinking now that it's linear, so important to have those key points very, very clear. Another feature is rewind, which along with there's also fast forward, and talking about synoptic links. This really allows your students to make links across topic areas, which are either in the actual textbook itself, or it could be in associated books from Further Maths or one of the options accordingly. We have assessment objectives, a really, really major focus on problem solving and proofs, as I said before. And we try to underpin everything with that, so it's not kind of like something roped off as an afterthought at the end of an exercise where you have this sort of icon against a question that might be problem solving or whatever. We've really tried to embed it. And the importance of clear diagrams and a clear look and feel, the sort of visual representation of key concepts, allowing that sort of multiple or linked representation to really aid understanding throughout. So we've tried to do that in our textbooks. We have a digital platform which offers rich content and basically allows you to you or your students your students to engage with the material either using a PC or a tablet. Totally flexible learning, so you have the student book in a kind of a flowable text format, in a form that you can annotate, and your annotations can be shared. There are you can add links to websites. You can add hyperlinks to other resources. You can add any notes that you want to for prompts for particular aspects of the book, or you can add bookmarks. Or another powerful feature is you can message students with it, and it's all there to aid your teaching and learning. Alongside that, there are things like extension activities, support activities for those who might be struggling. We don't know what sort of range of abilities are going to come through with from the new GCSEs, and we've got full work solutions all on the Elevate platform. So I think at this point, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Gemma.
Thanks, Carl. And I'm just going to quickly run through the resources that we cover. So we have a Student Book 1 and 2 that cover the A-level maths. And then we also have Pure Core, Mechanics, Statistics, Additional, Pure and Discrete maths as well. All of these come in print book or a bundle of print with a single digital license, or single digital license or a whole school license. The only difference actually is the Additional, Pure and Discrete, which are just the digital options only. And we're also doing special offer for any schools that are subscribing to the Cambridge resources, and that's up until September. So for any print book that you buy, the digital resources will be completely free to you. We also have lots of support on our website. So if you want to go to cambridge.org/A-level maths, you'll find draft copy of the full book. You'll also find digital trials that you can sign up to free of charge, and also free of charge schemes of works that you can download. And if you want a quote or to place an order or any more information at all, you can contact your local sales consultant and we can pop out and come and see you. I think Stephen is going to share the slides after the session, so if there's any more information you want, you can go to our website. Thanks very much.
Right, thank you for that. And yes, this presentation is being recorded, and you'll be able to download it. So if your colleagues are interested in hearing it, then you can share the link with your colleagues. We've got more webinars the rest of this week, dealing with, today has been focused on the OCR Spec A, and tomorrow is looking at the OCR Spec B, the MEI spec, and then Wednesday and Thursday we're looking more at specific aspects, so teaching mechanics, teaching statistics, using technology, and also we've got other speakers coming in from underground maths and from studio, looking at different aspects to help support you in this transition. As well as the webinars and the conference on Friday, we're going to be following this up with some CPD events, face-to-face events around the country. So log in and sign up for these events. And as well as these, we've also got some network events coming up. So as well as these full-day CPD events, we've got the network events, which are twilight sessions. We're always looking for centres to host these twilight sessions, and so if you'd be interested in getting a member of the maths team down to talk about, as well as A-level maths, also GCSE, core maths, entry level. One of the things about the OCR maths team is we work on all the qualifications. So we can talk about everything. We can have a specific focus on A-level, which is going through the transition at the moment, but there's also giving feedback on how the GCSE has been experienced by this first cohort, and issues that have come up on, as I say, entry level and the core maths. So sign up with the Teach with OCR to get regular updates of what's changing when we've put new resources on the OCR website, and to find out when we've got more CPD and network events coming up. As I say, at the moment we're advertising the events going through to the end of this term, but we'll be running similar events in the autumn term. If there's something that we haven't offered, and you feel it would be an important CPD event to run, then send in your suggestions, and then we can either answer the questions just online, or perhaps run some events, or let you know when there are these face-to-face events when you can get some more in-depth response on those. So at the moment, except you can download all our accredited specifications from our subject website, sign up for the CPD training. You can contact us by telephone, email, you can follow us on Twitter, and yes, any questions you've got, please let me know. We've got a few minutes before the end of this session, so if there is anything you'd like me to cover now, then let me know. There's a question from Paul. Yes, we are looking to put a lot more resources on the website, especially the large data set. The main changes in the reform are the fact that students must do some mechanics and must do some statistics. So one of our key focuses is on the resources for those teachers that are teaching mechanics for the first time and teaching statistics for the first time, and very specifically teaching the large data set, which is teaching for the first time for everyone. If you've been teaching core maths, then you will be familiar with a smaller large data set, but we will have more resources like that large data set. One of the sessions I'm running on Wednesdays using technology, I will be talking about some of the uses of technology that can help support teaching and using the large data set. There is also a session specifically on teaching statistics, which will be done by my colleague Will, and he will be going into a lot of detail about very specific things of expanding on how you can use the large data set. Because I should stress, the large data set was always intended as a teaching and learning resource, because one of the things we found when we were actually trying to find an appropriate large data set for the specification, actually finding a published large data set that did everything that we needed to be able to practice was actually quite difficult. One of the things students have to do is understand about cleaning the data. Well, no one actually publishes uncleaned data. So actually going back and trying to find something that had some gaps actually proved quite problematic. There's a question about the scheme of work, the scheme of work builder. We are hoping to be launching it by the end of this week. We're doing some trials with it at the moment, and one of the things I'm going to be doing in order to trial it is to put in the content items in the order that we have for the teaching order framework, because then we'll be confident that it all works, and then it will be available for teachers to access. We're coming up to 6 o'clock. I can't see any more questions coming through, but feel free to type in any more questions, and I'm going to hand back over to Heather to close off the session. But any questions you type in, we will get back to you offline from this presentation. So handing back over to Heather, I hope this has been useful, and we look forward to seeing you again or hearing from you in the near future.
Thanks very much, Stephen, and thanks to everyone for joining us for this online event, and we hope you found the session useful. A full recording will be emailed out to you. If you have any feedback, please do complete the short survey that will appear when you have logged out. Thank you.